resort to glasses tonight. Go ahead and just grab them. Anybody out there? Hey, Melissa. Faithful Melissa. How are you? Missing Florida beaches for sure. We'll get started in just a minute. Everything's blurry tonight for some reason. Probably gonna have to use my glasses. Look like a granny, but that's okay. I'm good, thank you. Just another minute or so. Trying to think of something interesting, but I don't know. I'm tired. It's only Monday and I'm tired. But that's okay. That means I had a good weekend. Okay, we have a couple more people. And just a few more seconds. Okay, let me go ahead and get started. Oh, Matt's missing the fishing. That was his thing down there. Since he couldn't hunt so much, he liked the fishing for sure. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And we are on chapter 5 this week. And this one is Wisdom for Big Girl Wives. And like I said last week on the singles, this isn't just for singles. This isn't just for wives. You definitely can apply some of this stuff just to relationships in general. So we'll go ahead and get started. And she starts off talking about an instance that was early on in her marriage, and she basically felt like she had blown how to handle the whole situation. And it's a cute little story, but the thing that I love is after she talks about it, she says, now I look back on that moment and smile. Yeah, I have to do this. Sorry. Now I look back on that moment and smile. I was a little girl wife who needed to grow up and to come to the realization that my husband was not responsible for my happiness. But I think what I like the best about that, even over the whole story or whatever, is the fact that she says, now when I look back, I smile. We're going to blow this. We're going to mess things up sometimes. And just knowing that we can eventually get it right is kind of the exciting part. So that's what stood out to me even more than the whole story, like I said. So, and basically the story was about, they were early in their marriage. They'd moved to somewhere that she didn't know a lot of people. And he came home from, she was at home all day. She didn't have a job. And so she was home. He came home. And, she just was basically starving for attention or starving for some kind of interaction. And he said that he was going to something with some people from work and that it didn't involve wives. Wives weren't invited. Okay, I'm seeing the reflection of the phone, and that looks really weird. I'm going to try this again without him. He was going out with some of the guys from work, and it's something that wives weren't invited to. And because she'd been sad and because she was home alone and all this stuff, she basically had a meltdown. And why wouldn't they want wives? Why would you want to be there? Blah, blah, blah. But like I said, now when she looks back on it, she just laughs because it's not really that big a deal. She said, my husband did not have to save me from my loneliness or my self-pity. It just wasn't his job. I was responsible for me. And I guess that's kind of going to be the theme for this whole chapter. I'm responsible for me. I may want to fix everyone else. I may want to help everyone else. I may want to take care of everyone else. But ultimately, I'm responsible for me. And if you can get a hold of that, then that's kind of your freedom is, you can pray for people. You can love on people. You can do what's right. But you're responsible for you. Regardless of how they act, regardless of what they say or do, you're still responsible for how you act. And I'm probably going to come back to that a lot during this chapter. So she said, and she talks about, marriage and what her expectations were. And she said, I believe that somehow it would just work out because we loved each other. Love is a good start, but there's more to this big girl marriage thing. And that is so true. It's, yeah. And I don't know. I kind of think that, oh, we're in love, all that stuff. If things started out like they're going to be later on, we might not get married, because there are some things that you go through that you're like, this is not fun. This is not what I signed up for. But because you're already married, you're willing to work through it with the person that God gave you. And so, you need those initial attractions, and you need those giddy blinders, I guess, at the beginning sometimes, to make sure that you don't give up too soon. That's my thought, my opinion. But anyway, it says each partner in a marriage has a role to play. When you begin to embrace your own role and the truth of personal responsibility and fulfillment, you will take a huge amount of pressure off of your relationship. And that's absolutely true. When we start placing expectations on our partner to take care of us and to make us happy and whatever, it causes stress, because that's not how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to make us happy. We're supposed to be confident regardless of how the other person, and that goes both ways. I mean, there are times that we absolutely can push buttons and can lay guilt trips and do whatever. Even when we do that, their responsibility is to act the way they're supposed to act regardless. Not that that's an excuse or you're supposed to test them or whatever. But anyway, then this first section is called No Man Can Do It All. And it says, when God created a woman, basically they're back. I will make him a helper meet. And she says, it doesn't sound like a little girl wife who must be cared for. It sounds as if the man and the woman are to be complementary of one another. Where he is weak, she can be strong, and vice versa. And that's so true. And when you complete each other, I've heard that term a lot, and it's not supposed to be complete as in make whole. It's supposed to be as complete as in complementary. You're supposed to be whole all on your own. He's supposed to be whole all on his own. But then when the two of you get together, you're a force to be reckoned with if you do things right. And so that's, you fit. Yes, your life is, as a marriage is whole once you find each other and you're together. But you have to keep in mind that you're supposed to be okay just being you, regardless of if he's there or not. So the whole completing each other, you're supposed to complement each other, as in going together. So, and making the other person better, basically. It says a big girl understands that men and women are different, and she celebrates those differences. And that's definitely, again, early on, it's real easy to think, well, he's supposed to think like I do. He's supposed to understand me. But we're different. And if you can just get over the fact that we're different and not try to fight against that, you're going to have a lot less stress in your life. It says a big girl believes that she can be one of the best assets that her husband has, and she works just to be that. And that's true. You can probably think of some couples that when you look at them, you're like, oh, he makes her better, or oh, she makes him better. And then there are couples that you can look at and you realize that one of them is a downfall to the other. And you don't ever want to be that. That's not what we were created to do. We were created to make each other better and to support each other. And so that's, and like I said, a lot of this stuff, yes, this is about wives, but this can just be about Christian women. We're supposed to make each other better. I mean, whoever you're in relationship with, you're supposed to bring something that's going to help them, that's going to brighten their day, that's going to make things, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the glare off my glasses because that just looks weird. You're supposed to bring something to the table in every relationship. So these things that we're talking about tonight, don't just tune me out if you're not married, or you don't ever want to be married, or you've been married and you're not now. This is something that you can apply to other relationships or future relationships regardless. Let's see. When it talks about little girls, it says she will forever be looking for a husband for her happiness. Her husband won't be able to succeed when forced to play the role of both husband and father. And I think that's the biggest difference between a big girl wife and a little girl wife, is a little girl wife needs to be taken care of. A big girl wife, even though she doesn't always have to do it on her own, she can do it on her own. She doesn't need someone to take care of her and to, wait on her hand and foot and that kind of stuff. She can do it. She can step up. She can take care of her family. She can take care of her. A little girl, needs her husband to drive her everywhere. You may want your husband to drive you so that y'all are together and you have fun and, spend time together, but you don't need that if you're a big girl wife. You can have that, but you don't have to have that. Let's see. And it explains the difference here. It says, a father is responsible for his little girl's mental, physical, and emotional well-being. He also is responsible to correct her and guide her character formation. He eventually will have to let her go. That's the role of a father. When a husband has to step in and be a father to his wife, that's when things go wrong. These things that her dad is teaching her eventually become her responsibility because he has to let her go. So instead of transferring that to her husband, what she needs to do is realize that that's her responsibility. There's no reason to put that pressure on her husband. And it gives an example of a family that, that's the mom. She's the one that her husband babied her and was a father to her as opposed to a husband. And then the kids came along, and then that was, one more person for him to take care of, and then one more person for him to take care of, because she just allowed him to continue to take care of her. If he's taking care of her, he might as well take care of the kids. And she describes it as the children lived in a sad house. And it's because no one was stepping up into the roles that they were supposed to be in. And this story that, the couple that she had counseled and had experience with eventually got to the point, and she said it was a sad day, but he walked in and said, I'll send you my paycheck, but I have nothing more to give. He could no longer be a daddy to both his children and his little girl wife. Her needs seemed limitless, and he could not go on. So eventually, your husband's going to wear out. If you allow him to take the role of father instead of husband, it's going to take a toll on your on your marriage. So make sure that that's not you. And, of course, anytime in the Christian world we talk about wives, Proverbs 31 comes up. I've read Proverbs 31 and thought, ain't no way, I can't do all those things. But she really puts it into perspective and kind of translates the meaning of what the chapter is trying to get across. And basically, this is a mom talking to her son that's a king and giving him advice on what to look for. Not the kind of girl to date, but the kind of girl to marry, what you should look for. And she said, if you've assumed that she's an overworked, obsessive-compulsive housewife, you might take another look. She actually is a safe big girl who knows her abilities, fulfills her roles, and is a blessing to her family. She knew her role and she performed it well. And that's kind of the sum of the whole chapter. But in the chapter Proverbs 31. But this chapter of the book kind of breaks it down into our language, into our understanding now. So, and in general it says she wanted her son to take a wife who would be a blessing not only to him, but to herself and to her children as well. That's big. Hard sometimes, but to be a blessing to your mother-in-law. She wanted a daughter-in-law that would be a blessing to her. And honestly, since I was pregnant with Matt, I know that once his wife comes, she's going to fit with us. She's going to make us even better because she's going to enjoy our company and we're going to love her like she's one of ours because that's what I prayed for 22 years. She's coming soon. In the name of Jesus, she's coming soon. But the thing is, we're going to take her in and we're going to love her. So we're going to initiate that whole, we're going to get rid of the whole, ooh, your in-laws, We're going to be what we're supposed to be as in-laws, so she will be what she needs to be as a daughter-in-law. So anyway, personal little rant there. She told him to look for a woman who is capable, intelligent, and virtuous. And as we go through these things, and if you are single and have aspirations of being married, go ahead and get these things down. If this is something that you want to be, then start being that. If you want a husband that actually appreciates this kind of a wife, then start showing those characteristics. And it will get you a lot further. So the first thing, her translation of what Mom is saying is she does her husband only good for as long as she lives. A big girl wife can afford to serve her family because she isn't always caught up in the me syndrome. She isn't diminished by serving them. She's actually made stronger. And I know that, at different times along the way in our marriage and just in our family in general, I know that I've had those episodes of, gosh, they're just taking me for granted. They don't appreciate what I'm doing. You know, no one says thank you, blah, blah, blah. The whole pity party thing. And then it's, it's like I'm the martyr or something. But when I stop and think about it, I love that I get to serve them because that means they're here with me. That means that they're mine. And I know that there's going to be a day that they're not going to be in my house. And so I try to appreciate it and, take care of them, sometimes to a fault, because I wonder if they can do things for themselves sometimes. But that's okay. We'll get them to that. Let's see. It says she isn't diminished by serving them. She's actually made stronger. The big girl wife is trustworthy even when her mate may not be. And that one, like I said earlier, I'm getting back to the whole you're responsible for you. You can't blame your actions or your emotions on what your spouse does or what your kids do, what kind of mood they're in. And it's easy to just feed off of that, especially when you think about the fact that the husband is supposed to be the leader of the family and he's supposed to set the tone. So if he's having a bad day and you're not there to be that peace and to be that helpmate, then it's easy for you to, he's in a bad mood, I'm in a bad mood. You may not consciously do it, but what you have to do is consciously not do that. You have to make a decision that, what, he's had a bad day. It's okay. I understand. I've been there. I'm not going to join him in his bad day. Yeah, you're responsible for yourself. And I have to remind myself that a lot because, it's easy to get sucked in. It's easier to bring someone down than it is to bring someone up most often. And so I have to remind myself that too. So, you're responsible for you. You can't blame it on their bad moods as much as we want to, and as much as I have before. I can't continue to do that. Let's see. It says, however tough your situation is, you can be the one who is just fine in the middle of it. And that's true. Again, and I've said this a million times already, and we're only on chapter 5. It's a choice. It's your choice. You can be okay regardless of the situation. You don't have to let your situations control you. Let's see. And it talks about a lady too that she was an awesome, sweet, peaceful lady, but she married someone that was not a Christ follower. He was a great man, but he wasn't a Christ follower. And that gave her a whole other list of opportunities to show grace and to choose to do what's right regardless of what your spouse does. And, she said that the scripture of Philippians 4:11 through 13 that talks about learning to be content in whatever situation you're in is what she held on to. She chose the situation for whatever reason, and she loves her husband. So she's going to be content even when he's not acting the way she wants him to, or maybe he's not going to church with her. And I understand. I did this for years. It's not easy. I'm not acting like it's easy. There were times I didn't want to. There were times that I did it just simply because I knew I was supposed to do it. But what you end up doing is realizing you're responsible for you. And, especially even after I had Matt, I couldn't not go to church. I couldn't not get involved, in the teaching and the learning that I needed just because Tommy didn't want to go. I had to do that anyway, and I had to start teaching Matt. I didn't like it. I was in a wrong role as far as I was taking the spiritual leader role of the home, but someone had to do it, and so I did it very grudgingly sometimes, but I did it until he assumed that role. And I'm glad that I did and that I didn't give up. And I'm going to tell you, it took, we dated for 3 years. We were married for 7 years. So 10 years of things not quite being like they were supposed to be, but I knew that God gave him to me. And so, I feel like my timing was off. I think that if we had, maybe if I had been stronger in my faith in the beginning and just said, I love you, but we need to do this together and do it the right way, I think things would have been a lot better because I think he would have done it the right way. But anyway, it's the choice that we made, and we're fine now. So there's always hope. So let me keep going. And this is still in the same section about she does her husband only good for as long as she lives. And, and this is totally true. And this is the thing that helped me is when you allow Christ to be the answer to your questions. Even when things don't make sense and when you don't feel like things are fair or you don't feel like things are even just quite right, stop looking to your husband for answers. Stop looking to your marriage for answers. It's Christ that has to be your answer. You have to get to the point, and I got to this point before Tommy accepted Christ, where I finally said, okay, God, it's you and me. Where, regardless of what happens, if this doesn't work out, if this works out, whatever, I need to be where I need to be with you so that eternity I'm doing the right thing, And that was so hard because, there were times that I was like, okay, God, why am I in this, in this position? Why are things not working out the way that I wanted them to and that I dreamed that they would and whatever? But above all else, I had to get back to, okay, God, it's you and me. What do I need to do to fix me? Because I had become angry, I'd become defensive. Things weren't right. And so I had to get back to God and me. And once I got back to God and me, I was able to love Tommy the way that I needed to. I was able to pray for him instead of praying for him so that things would be easier for me. That was my selfish prayer for years and years. I didn't realize it. I wasn't purposely doing it, but it's exactly what I was doing. Let's see. If you have Christ living in you to give you strength and the wisdom, then you're going to be able to get the job done. But that, I think Tommy has spoken about it recently, that takes actually spending time with him. You have to spend time with God. You have to slow down and listen, not just, okay, pour everything out and then go about your day and expect him to fix everything. You need to listen so that you can do your part and things can be fixed a little easier and a little faster without you continuing to mess things up because you're not listening. So, the next thing that Mom said in this chapter is she adds to the family income whenever she can. Doesn't mean you have to go work. It means that you need to be smart with what you have, basically. If there's something you can do to make your situation better, then do it. If you need to work, work. If you don't need to work, don't work. It's whatever works for your situation. I mean, you know your finances, you know the health of your family and what you need to be doing. Just do it. This isn't saying she goes and works her butt off all the time. You can work your butt off at home and still be fine. You can work your butt off at work and you're doing what you need to do. So, let's see. She adds to the family income whenever she can. Next, she understands the laws of spiritual, mental, and physical health, and she obeys them. That's basically you just take care of yourself. You take care of your relationship with God. You take care of yourself emotionally. You take care of yourself physically. And that's what this woman did. She understands the laws of spiritual, mental, and physical health, and she obeys them. I think that one's pretty straightforward. We all can make excuses, me included. We all can, oh, I don't have time, whatever. Honestly, we have time for what we want to have time for. And we all know what that means. We understand spiritual, mental, and physical health. It's just a choice of if we're going to actually take care of those things or not. And it's not an excuse of, oh, I'm taking care of everyone else, so you can take care of you too in the process. And part of this study, you're taking care of you. You're learning and focusing on things that are important to you. It says she can be counted on to be there through the hard times as well as the good. And that one, again, that's pretty self-explanatory. You don't run when things get hard. You don't fall apart and make things harder. You deal with it. You do what you need to do to help your family get through whatever your situations are. The next one is she's a giver. She opens her hand to the poor, yet she reaches out her filled hands to the needy. Just be a giver. Be a giver to your family. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give money to everyone that you pass by. It just give encouragement, give love, give positivity, give support. Just be a giver to the people that are in your lives, that are in your life. Okay, the next thing that the mom says is she is not fearful of days to come. She lives well the days given. Basically, enjoy your life. Realize that, every day is a gift. You've heard that all the time. But every day that you get up, purposely live your life that day. Don't just let a day go by because it's a day. You just need to, you need to live the life that you've been given. And you're going to mess up along the way. You're going to make mistakes. But if you live your life purposely, you're going to have a lot less regrets, and you're going to get a lot further along because you have chosen the way that you're going to act and the way that you're going to live. So, the next thing that Mom says is she is wise and respected by those who know her best, her children and her husband. So, I want you to stop and evaluate, really when I do this the most is when I sit in funerals, or I sit with someone that's sick and their family's talking about them, and I'm having someone peek in at me, and I'm getting a message. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Nice. Okay. That's the beauty of doing a women's group out of your house. I had to answer a quick question. So, anyway. Oh yeah, back to the whole, when I go to funerals and stuff, and I listen to what people say, and I listen to people that have a hard time saying something good. You know, you can tell they didn't have a great relationship. And then I listen to people that just, you know, go on, and you can tell it's genuine, not the ones that are trying to convince themselves or everyone else that, oh, they were a great woman and we had a great relationship. It's the ones that you can tell are actually legitimate. And, you know, that's when I stop and reevaluate, you know, what will my kids say when I'm gone? What will my husband say about me? And if, you know, there are times that I don't think I would like what they would say, and so those are the times that I need to reevaluate who I am and how I'm acting and how I'm reacting to situations. And, you know, start being who you want people to talk about when you're not around. You know, after you're gone, or just, you know, not necessarily after you've died, but when you've gone to another place, when you are, you know, living in a different area, and, you know, your family and they're talking about you and describing you to people, go ahead and be the person that you want them to describe, and then it's not an issue. Yeah, it's real easy, huh? Easier said than done sometimes, but if we're at least purposeful about it, we're going to get a little further along. It says, as a big girl wife, you can do and be what God wants, no matter what your mate may like. And that's true. Circumstances don't have to be perfect for a big girl wife to choose to be okay and to get on with her life. And I like this phrase, and I've heard this, you know, different places, but it says we do things in spite of, not because of. And that's true. You know, you don't have to let your circumstances dictate who you are and what you do. You decide ahead of time who you are and what you're willing to do, what you're willing to say, you know, what you're willing to put up with, basically, and you stick to that. Regardless of your circumstances, you still remain who you are and you remain solid. So the next section is, well, and this is one that she gives a lot of opinions. I'm not going to give a lot of opinions, but I will read a few of the things that are in here and kind of elaborate on it. But it's big girl wives don't stick around for abuse. And that's one thing. You know, a lot of times, you know, we're taught, hey, you're married, you stay married, you make it work. But if it's a situation where it's an abusive situation, get to safety. I'm not giving you permission to divorce. That's something you deal with later on. You know, if it's something that, if you have grounds for divorce, then that's your decision. But get to safety. It's not okay for someone to be abusive to you in any form. So a big girl doesn't suck it up and stick it out. A big girl realizes this is not healthy. This is not good for me. This is not good for my family. Get to safety, and then you can work on the marriage. Then you can work on whatever, if it's something that can be worked on, but go ahead and get to safety is the main thing. It says, if you try to live the life of a big girl with an abuser, you will only get assaulted that much more. And when you separate yourself, you know, get to safety and get to a different place, a lot of times it leaves the person to deal with the consequences of their behavior. And a lot of times things fall in around them. It says, God can do miracles while you're in a safe place just as well as he can while you sit in danger, never knowing what's going to happen next. And I think that is definitely key. God can still work whether you're together or not, you know, physically, if you're in the same location or if you're not. God can still work miracles. God can still heal this. God can still take care of it. But it's okay to be safe. And it also encourages you to enlist help. You know, make sure that you have a friend, that you have a family member, that you have someone that can help you and maybe even hold you accountable when you start thinking, oh, you know, I need to go back, I need to whatever. If it's not a healthy, safe time yet, then you don't need to do it. So I think that's all I'm going to say about that part. If you need to talk, you know, on a personal level more than further beyond that, get a hold of me. Send me a message, and we will definitely get together and talk. Let's see. And, we're supposed to remember that the man is ultimately responsible for his submission to God and his treatment of his wife and his children. This responsibility does not in any way make his wife less responsible for her behavior or her choices. And, it talks about, too, we like to quote the scripture in Romans chapter 8 about, God working everything together for good for those that love him, that are called according to his purpose. But she also points out, and I love this, she said, but why put God in a position of making some disaster work together for good when it could have been avoided with some big girl wisdom? That's true across the board. Any that could fit in any of these chapters, basically. Wrong choices are unavoidable. We're going to make wrong choices. But when we know the facts and nevertheless go against what is right in the name of, following our husband, following our friends, or whatever, when there's something wrong, yes, God will help us, but why even go through that in the first place? If it's something that you can do right up front and not have those scars and not have those issues to deal with, then go ahead. And, the other thing that she does point out about this whole abuse thing, it says going along with bad behavior is not submission. We're supposed to submit to our husbands, but that's submitting to his authority. That's not submitting to his abuse or, bad behaviors. Just because your husband makes a wrong choice doesn't mean that you have to make a wrong choice if it goes against God's word. It's absolutely okay to say, that's not okay for me. And it says also, at the same time, big girls avoid nagging and taking on the demeanor of self-willed little girls. They are reasonable and willing to submit to their husband's sound leadership, even if it is not their favorite thing to do. They don't have to have their way about everything and can be reasoned with. You don't have to have your way about everything, and you can be reasoned with if you're a big girl. Big girls understand that the whole heart of biblical submission is about fitting in with their mates, working together with them, and sticking together like glue. So just keep that in mind. The submit is not so that they can keep you down or whatever. The submit is, I'm going to respect the fact that you're listening to God, and I'm going to follow you. I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to give my opinion when I feel like God's pushing me to give my opinion. But I'm going to follow you because I trust you. That's part of a marriage. So we're getting close to wrapping it up. Let's see. Big girl wives help little boy husbands mature. That one's not always easy. That's not always fun. But fussing at him isn't the answer. And being cold isn't the answer. So just because, even if your husband's not quite there yet where you think he should be spiritually or whatever, all you're going to do is push him away if you nag him. Just like he's not supposed to be your father, you're not supposed to be his mother. And it's easy to fall into that role because we are caregivers and we, want to help people. A lot of times that can come across as controlling or as babying or talking down to them, and that's not what we're supposed to do. It says, God didn't say that if you marry a little boy, you can go ahead and bail out on him. That's key too. Big girls know that love and kindness go a long way toward drawing another person toward a more mature life. Love still covers a multitude of sins, and to a degree, that is what a marriage is about. Give them some slack, give them some grace, because we need it too, and that's the biggest thing. Just slow down, step back. There are so many things over the course of our marriage that if I could go back and do it over again, I could have made things so much easier, but it's, you get caught up in the moment, and if you are not grounded in who you are and what you're willing to do as far as actions go, it's real easy to slip into, being wounded, being offended, being hurt when it's not a situation that you should be wounded, hurt, or offended by. Let's see, it says, even little boy husbands, grumpy husbands, or distant husbands all have some good qualities that you can focus your thoughts on. When you think on the characteristics that are good in your mate and are grateful for those qualities, you will find that you can tolerate the other things that he does with a much better humor. And that's true. I mean, you married him for a reason. There's something. If you have to just get back to the basics of, this is why I fell in love with you, this is why I wanted to be with you, start looking for those things. It's really easy to find, and I heard this in context of, talking about a church. It's really easy to find reasons to leave. but what you need to look for are reasons to stay. And I think that can apply to a marriage too. I mean, we can all, if we look hard enough, we can convince ourselves that, oh, I don't deserve this or whatever. Look for reasons to stay. Stop looking for an out. Make things better, and then you're going to be better off in the long run. So the last section, next to last section, is big girl wives don't play word games. And that's true, and that's a lot of women in general. We can fall into this trap if we allow ourselves. A big girl wife doesn't play emotional games with her husband. She uses her words to communicate. She doesn't resort to the guessing game. And that's, any relationship that you're in. Don't get offended because your friend can't read your mind or didn't get your little context clues in what you said. Just tell people how you feel in a nice way. I'm not saying speak your mind. People always know where I stand because I'll tell them. That's not right either. That's not love. That's not grace. But don't play games with friends, with kids, with your husband, whatever. There's no reason for it. It says a big girl wife tries to speak in terms that she and her husband will understand so that there's no misunderstanding. And that's key. Just because you think you've communicated in an amazing way, if you haven't spoken in their language and used words that, are important to them, or you may use a different tone and you don't realize you're using that tone, you're not going to communicate. You're going to cause misunderstanding. So think about your listener and the best way that you can communicate with them based on what they need. And that's across the board, not just your husband's, but any relationship that you're in. Let's see. This takes work, patience, trial and error, and prayer. This is true whether she's dealing with a difficult issue between them or whether she's explaining how the dishwasher overflowed. and that's true too. A lot of times it's crazy little everyday life things that can cause big blow-ups or whatever if if we're frustrated and we tell them how frustrated we are and we let it come across that we're upset with them as opposed to upset with the situation. And again, I'm not in any way acting like I have this book down by any means. I continue to work on these things. Sometimes I do great, sometimes epic fail. So I am working on this with you guys. And like I said, I wanted this book because I needed this book. I need a refresher on some of these things that I've let slip. It says, if you're caught up in a childish discussion, it's easy for it to degenerate to childish ways. Yelling, screaming, sarcasm, and low blow remarks need to be left to children. Absolutely. But how easy is it for us to do that? When we get in, we start getting defensive, basically we make it about us. So don't make it about you, and maybe you can get through it without these, but sometimes it's hard. It says a big girl can control the tone of her conversation even though her partner doesn't. And that's the thing a lot of times that, when Tommy and I do have arguments, a lot of it's just because of tone or just because of how it comes out when the person speaking didn't mean it in a wrong way, but it absolutely came out in a wrong way because of tone. So again, be purposeful with how you live, be purposeful with what you say and how you say it, and it will make a huge difference. It says you can choose your reactions, you can choose what you think, you can choose what you feel. You can choose how you respond. And that's, that's kind of a thing that I'm trying to remind myself continually. Choose how, get back to it. You choose your reactions, you choose what you think, you choose what you feel, you choose how you respond. And a lot of times, well, they hurt me because of this. No, they hurt you because you allowed them to hurt you. Yeah, what they did or said may have been absolutely wrong, but you don't have to let it change you. You don't have to let it, it's hard sometimes because you get irritated and you get frustrated and it's not right, what they did, but you're still, again, responsible for you. It said it doesn't mean that remarks can't hurt or that you're not taken aback by what your mate might say to you, but you can determine how long you plan to nurse that hurt. And that's key. Are you going to drag it out and make it worse, or are you just going to fix it? And when, it talks about, communication, and that's hard work. And if you need to, if you realize that you're getting hurt or you're getting offended, maybe just stop and say, when you said this, is this what you meant? And then you give them the opportunity to say, no, that's not what I meant. That's how you took it, but that's not what I meant. And then you can fix that. So, and then the last thing to wrap this up, it says a big girl wife is a treasure. Her stability and wisdom will have a significant calming force. Many marriages are intact today because a wife decided to be a big girl when things got tough and the road became steep. It's not the circumstances that determine the designation of a big girl wife. It's the big girl wife who determines how she will handle the circumstances. And that's awesome. I mean, it's, again, you're responsible for you. And, you know, if you decide that you want your home to be the peaceful place that everyone comes back to, you just have to make it that. You know, in spite of what's going on, in spite of how everyone else is acting, you have to be that peace and that calm and that stability. And then your family's going to know when they need something, when they need someone, that you're safe. So anyway, big girl wife. Lots of things to think about and work on, me included. And then next week, I think the chapter's on kids. But like I've said every time, it doesn't matter if you have kids or not. There are things in here that we can all learn from. So I've enjoyed my time with you guys, and I guess I'll see you next Monday. If you have any questions, get with me. You know, send me a message either on the church Facebook page or on my Facebook page, and we will find a way to get in touch. So anyway, no more glare in my eyes. But I love you guys, and I will see you next week. Have a great week. Bye. Maybe.